Hey, and welcome back to Knit Your Stress Away. I am Nadine. I'm the host here on the podcast, and we are 3 episodes away from finishing the summer throwback series here on the podcast, where I'm bringing back episodes from the last year and a half that have been downloaded often and that I have heard great feedback about. So I'm excited to bring some of these episodes back. And today we are diving into one that I thought was so very fun. I believe this was in the beginning of this year when I recorded this, somewhere in the wintertime. And it is all about how to create a knitting journal, tracking your progress, and celebrate your wins in your knitting journey. I think it's such a fun episode to bring back because we often forget to really, truly pat ourselves on the back when we complete something. And this is such a beautiful way to kind of document how far you've come. So get ready to listen to this fun episode where we dive deep into how you can actually do that. Just a little heads up, the links that I'm mentioning in this episode may not work anymore, but just be aware that everything that you might need from me, that in free downloads, if you haven't gotten them yet, you can find at theknittingmamas.com. One link, everything is right there. And let's dive into this episode. I hope you enjoy. Today on the podcast, we're talking about something that I personally wish I had done right from the start when I picked up my knitting needles again back in 2020. I didn't think about doing this, and I highly recommend for you to start doing it now if you haven't already, and that is keeping a knitting journal. So let's dive into today's episode and talk about why this is such a fun thing to do. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. I am Nadine Medina, a mom who rediscovered knitting during a stressful season and found it to be the ultimate way to relax, recharge, and reconnect with myself. If you're feeling overwhelmed and wondering if there's a creative outlet that could actually help you feel calmer and in more control, you're in the right place. In this podcast, I'll show you how knitting can be a simple stress-busting tool, even if you've never picked up needles before. So take a deep breath, let go of the chaos for a moment, and let's explore how knitting could become your new favorite way to find calm and joy. Before I dive into today's episode, I would love to read you a testimonial because they make me so happy. It makes me so happy to hear that you are enjoying the podcast, that it's adding something to your life, and that you're getting something out of this that enhances your well-being and your life. So let me read this one from the podcast. For anyone that's looking to start a new hobby like knitting, this podcast is perfect for you. Nadine is a great teacher, and I love how she incorporates her love of knitting with wellness and self-care. A must-listen podcast for busy moms looking to reconnect with themselves and find a creative outlet. Thank you so much for that. That is exactly why I show up here week after week, because it makes me happy to see that moms are finding their way back to something joyful that they may not have done in a while, or that they may have never really truly done. And finding something that gives you that is just such an amazing moment, because most of us at one point or another during motherhood are feeling a little bit lost, and not having something that can give you an outlet, if it's a creative one or just any outlet that you need to feel whole and to have something that means something to you and maybe not everybody else around you, is such a big part of showing up in a great way for your family and for yourself. So if knitting is that thing for you, and if I can help give that back to you, it just makes my day. So with that said, let's dive into today's episode, which is all about keeping a knitting journal. And why did I think about that? Because I feel like, as busy moms, we don't often stop to appreciate something we have accomplished. I know this for sure for myself, that, any small or big win tends to be overlooked because we're so busy with the next thing already that we're not even realizing how far we've come and how many things we have done that are extraordinary. And they may be small things, but they're still extraordinary, right? So keeping a journal of your knitted projects or of your progress of a project, or if it's just a practice piece right now because you're starting out, that is fantastic. And it gives you a space to really see your progress that you're making, celebrating your wins, and also stay inspired to keep creating and keep going, right? Because if you can see all the things that you have made already, then you can see how much progress you've made, how much more you have learned, how many challenges you took on, and how many things you now have to show for that you can wear out in the world and just feel so proud of. I think it is such an incredible part of this knitting journey and such an incredible thing about this craft that is often overlooked. And I just saw something on Instagram yesterday where I think she was a psychologist or some mental health professional, and she was talking about knitting being incredible for so many reasons. Like health benefits, yes, everything has been proven and it's scientifically proven that this is a real thing. But she also talked about the fact that accomplishing something with it, not just sitting, like, in other words, like self-care or taking moments for yourself can also just mean like you sit down and you do nothing and your brain is just going in all the directions. But you're actually doing something with this craft that puts focus on something in front of you, that helps you create something that makes you feel accomplished. And that has more meaning and has more benefit to your brain and to your overall well-being than just doing nothing. And I think that is such a great way of looking at it, because oftentimes it's overlooked how much confidence this craft can build for you. But if we're not tracking what we actually have done and how far we've come, we can kind of get lost in that, and we can then sell ourselves short again, which is what we often do. We're like, oh yeah, I guess it's fine. Like my husband will look at these things and say, wow, I can't believe you made that. And every time he says that, I want to say, oh, it's nothing. I just do this. Like, it's just this thing that I do. Like, it's a small thing. But it's not, especially for someone who doesn't know how to do it. It's really impressive. And we can see it as such ourselves as well, and see it as an art and as a craft that we learned and that we are perfecting over and over and over. And you may not be keeping every piece that you have ever made. I definitely didn't, because some were too big and some were too small and some I don't like anymore and some I've worn so much that they don't look great anymore. And, it's time to say goodbye to those sometimes. So you don't always have them all in front of you or in your closet to see how many things you have actually created. And if you're still in the beginning phases, you may not have created anything yet, and that is okay. But I am actually kind of happy that you're listening to this episode right now, because you will start a journal about your knitting projects from the very beginning, which is even more amazing. And I know I didn't do that, and I'm kind of sad about it, to be honest with you. I guess I could go back, but because I don't remember everything that I have made, because I didn't keep everything, it'll be a little bit hard. So I started where I was, and then I started kind of tracking it. And there's different ways to do that. And that's what we want to talk about here. But I just want to kind of emphasize the confidence booster that this kind of holds for you. And that especially comes in when you have, maybe more of a challenging piece, or maybe there's a piece that you've put down and you haven't picked up in a while because it was that challenging. Trust me, I'm looking at one right now, right here in my knitting basket next to me. It's been here since last spring. So we'll see when I pick it up again. But that one really kicked my butt. And I was like, okay, later, we'll pick you up again when I'm a little bit better at this. But let's talk about what we're going to document here in your knitting journal. And it doesn't have to be a daunting task. I don't want this to be another thing where you're like, oh, great, now I have to do something else. No, let's not do that. Let's make it something fun and something joyful that just adds to your whole experience of knitting. So details like what yarn did you use, especially if it's something that you really enjoyed, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, I love this yarn. It's great to look back at it and be like, know exactly what that was. The needle size, also really helpful to keep track of, especially if you end up wanting to maybe make the same thing again and you're not sure if you used the same needle or yarn that was in the pattern. This is a great way to go back and look at it and be like, oh, okay, so I used something different. And then any modifications that you did as well would be a great reference for any future projects or anything, like when you want to repeat a project. I also really highly encourage you to reflect on the actual experience of making that project. So capture your thoughts on the whole process, what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy, and maybe if you changed anything. So example right now, I am currently working on a little neck scarf, and I can tell you the very beginning, the start of it kicked my butt, and I was not happy. And there was swearing. I had to rip it back, I want to say 6 times, and it was not a lot. It was a small, the small beginning of it, but I was like, my goodness, I'm not getting this. And as soon as it clicked, I was going and going and going, and it's fine. But there was just this little hump I couldn't get over. But that would be something that I would reflect on in my journal and put it down. What you can also add is photos or some sort of memories. Like, for example, a picture of the finished product would be amazing, of course, but also maybe a picture of the work in progress as it's growing. Or if you are like me and you just kind of scribble on the pattern because you're making notes of, which row comes next, or if you're using different colors and you have to indicate the color changes on the pattern, things like that, you can take a screenshot of that or just a picture and put it also in your journal with it. So here is a way to do this without it maybe being too overwhelming, too daunting if you don't want to make it like a handwritten journal, which obviously you can. So you can use a dotted journal, any blank journal, whatever, lined journal, doesn't matter, and just start doodling in there, 1 page, 2 pages per project. My personal favorite way currently to document what I'm knitting is also something that I'm using to keep track of my patterns in general. So it's like a pattern library. It's a little app called Knit and Note. I'm going to link it up in the show notes. I'm actually writing that down so I don't forget to do that. And it is such a fantastic app. It's free. There's a paid version because they have a shop in there and you get a percentage on the items in the shop, but they also have a bunch of like a whole pattern library that you can access for free if you pay for the app. But if you don't want to do that, I don't. You get the app for free and you can use the entire functionality of the app completely free. And it's fantastic. So you can upload all of your patterns into the library, into your own personal library. You can even put in your yarn stash if you have the time to do that. I have not sat down to do that yet, but you could put every yarn ball that you own in there as a personal stash, which is kind of cool. And then you can start a new project. So it records what pattern you're using, and then you can put in the needle size, the gauge, even the yarn that you're using, and even for who it is, which is so cool. Whom, for whom. Don't quote me on this. This is not my native language. I still should know this though. Anyway, let's skip that. But you can put all the details in there. And once you're done, so you can keep track of it and you can even doodle and annotate the pattern itself within the app, which is really neat and super helpful. You can keep track in there with row counters, also very helpful. I made an episode on tracking your rows and using this app as well in the past. I'm going to find the episode and then link it up in the show notes as well. I don't remember which episode that is, but I will put it down. And then, as you knit, you're using it to row count and to kind of keep your track and of your progress in there. And you can also make notes of what we just talked about earlier. You're reflecting on the process, on the experience, whatever you want to put down. And if you don't want to put anything down, that's cool too. And you can add a picture. So you can either add the picture of your finished project, or you can put just a screenshot of the front page of the pattern so you can easily find it again. You can start multiple projects at once, which, as you know, is one of my favorite things to do. Always have more than one thing going here. And at the end, when you're completed with your project, you just hit complete project and it basically puts it in an archive for you. And you can look at it anytime again after you've finished. It really is a great way to keep track of your knitted projects without it being overwhelming, because you already are using it to track your pattern anyway and track your rows and whatever else inside of there. So you basically kind of doing two things at once. And I think it's really great to be able to see later on what you have accomplished, especially within like a year or, within a certain time frame. So you can look back and really be proud of yourself. So whether you use or choose a notebook to write in and make it kind of a journaling exercise, which could be such a fun thing to do, make it colorful, put some pictures in there. Or if you use the app, the Knit and Note app, I think a knitting journal is the perfect way to stay organized and also celebrate your wins and keep the joy in your knitting. So if you are still kind of like, I don't know if knitting is for me, or you have decided, hey, I'm in, I want to start this, I have a free guide for you called 3 Things You Need to Start Knitting. And it'll help you take the very first step toward creating something really beautiful, your knitting journey and your first project. So it's super simple, very actionable, and it even comes with some bonus patterns that I have found to be amazing for beginners. So you can go ahead and download this free guide at theknittingmamas.com/start. All right. So here's a little bit of encouragement for you. Even if you just start very small and you're not jotting down all the things about your knitting projects, start something, where you just put down what you used and what the name of it is, when you started it and when you finished it. You are going to love looking back and seeing everything that you've created. Thank you so much for hanging out with me here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast today. I would love to hear from you over in our group, theknittingmamas.com/group. If you have any suggestions as to what you want me to talk about here on the podcast, please give me ideas in there as well. I would love to hear from you and tailor everything to exactly what you're looking for and what you need. And if you're still listening to this in 2024, this came out at the very end of 2024. I wish you a happy new year. Otherwise, I will see you in 2025. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.